Hello from the other side. Welcome to Total Disclosure. My name is Ty, and I am the host and creator of the show. I want to start off by saying thank you to every single person listening and watching on your chosen platform. Remember to go above and beyond by following and rating the show. It's free, and it tremendously helps us with getting to new audiences and helping with our algorithm. You can also help support the show by joining our membership on either Anchor or YouTube. For as low as the price of a cup of joe every month, you could be listening to ad-free content, gaining early access, and getting a yearly gift. Making the show is a passion, however, it isn't cheap. And this is how we keep the show free for you, the listener. Thank you in advance. Now let's get the party started.
Making a blanket statement to cover the entire UFO phenomenon over the past 20 years.
Back to Total Disclosure. I still have the little graphic thing up. Great production value here. Oh my God, it's great here. I usually don't even have all three of us in here, but I didn't really want to waste too much time. Today, we're here with Carl Crusher. Listen, I've been trying for like the last 3 days to get a hold of you and like some like reach out here through this person here, over this hoop, under this thread, but I finally got a hold of you today, so this is kind of like a last minute thing, and I just want to say thank you for kind of jumping in. I know you just finished a video, so and just the work that you've done in the community, I think is critical, especially when it comes to these areas of high strangeness, and I think your work's paid off. Recently, you've been featured in the show Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, which is obviously the spinoff of the show Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch, based on the History Channel. So welcome, Carl. Welcome.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate you reaching out and finally getting a hold of me. And this is really cool. I like doing this. It's what I do for a living now. And so I feel like I'm kind of into it deep enough where it's time. I like to spread the word, and I feel confident enough and validated enough in my work and research where it's fun to go out and talk about it now.
Yeah, and what I found fascinating about you is, your work was mostly on YouTube, but you were at these insane places like Skinwalker Ranch, under these, in these tunnels with the people from the show, but like not necessarily featured on the show. So I started getting into it, and I was like, who is this guy? And like, how is he getting this access? Come to find out, you made those connections over time, and you've done work at other places that are like Skinwalker Ranch. So not only have you seen the phenomenon and the phenomena that happen at Skinwalker, but the almost eerily similar places like it, and maybe you can go through some of the origins of how you got involved in this and how your work took you down this road specifically.
Yeah, it's kind of a long story. I'll try to encapsulate it. I mean, even as a child growing up, I grew up with incidents like sleep paralysis and seeing shadow figures in my bedroom and having sort of unexpected out-of-body travel experiences and stuff as a child. Accidentally remote viewing and reverse remote viewing and all kinds of things I didn't really understand because I was under this context of my religious upbringing as a little Mormon kid in Southeast Idaho.
Oh, so you're a Mormon as well. You have a Mormon connection?
Yeah.
That's a huge thing. Are you from Utah?
I grew up in Idaho. I was born in Rexburg.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mini Utah right up in Idaho there. So everybody that I knew, everybody I went to school with, it was a whole way of life, just like almost like being Amish, you know. And so I did the whole 2-year mission thing, went to Arkansas and served as a missionary for the church and all that, got married and went right step for step in all of it. But I always had this fundamental problem where the experiences that I was actually having that I would consider spiritual or paranormal or supernatural, they didn't mesh or jive with what I was being taught or told at the organized religion and with my upbringing. I was mostly made to just feel guilty, like these things were happening to me because I was doing something bad. And so there was something wrong with me, or I should feel guilty, or I need to change or something. And,
Right.
you know, and so I had to kind of get away from all of that. And it required a whole fundamental sort of internal revolution for me. But I always had these experiences growing up that I buried, even some that I shared with friends during sleepovers where we both had like shared dreams and like abduction experiences together with friends that were bizarre. That I can't really, yeah. And I've recently, you know, I've talked to Chris Bledsoe.
He's a good guy.
He's a
guy.
good guy. Yeah. I just talked to him on the phone today and going to be doing an interview with him. And man, reading his book, a lot of that was like very strangely familiar to kind of my childhood and everything.
Wow,
And
that's bizarre.
yeah, so I think, you know, I had one really strange experience as an adult, married, still Mormon, I was a local church leader in the community. And I got invited to go to California and film behind the scenes for this like Bigfoot documentary.
Okay.
And I mean, not to get into that whole thing, but oh, what's that?
Okay. I mean, that's where I draw my line, kind of, is Bigfoot. But
Well, that's where it got weird for me because, you know, I had the whole the whole Mormon context for Bigfoot is that he's like a descendant of Cain and he lives up in the mountains and all this weird, stupid
really?
folklore.
There's a connection.
Yeah. So the actual experience again did not jive with what I was taught. And so when I was up there in Northern California in the mountains outside of Sierraville, we had this total encounter with like this 8 to 9 foot tall shadow entity that came up through the trees and was shaking all the limbs. And under the context, it was totally like a classic Sasquatch encounter up in the woods and the big trees in California, right? But I've looked back on that experience so many times, and it was so much more like a paranormal encounter with this shadow entity that I've had explained to me by Native American elders and teachers so many times over. And I have a totally different understanding of what all of that was about and the way that it behaved and acted and everything. And the fact that it basically turned into a ball of light and floated up and flew over us at the end. All of that was a paradigm shift for me that led to me leaving the church. I ended up going through a divorce in the end, becoming almost like a Buddhist meditator. And then I learned the Monroe Institute Gateway method of meditation and doing all that stuff. And now I've, you know, gone down this path where I've completely changed what I do as a filmmaker and for my whole life. And this is basically all I do.
Just like a huge radical change. Now, I'm always interested in what the Native Americans have to say. So what were you told by the elder? Or maybe you didn't say elder. Maybe I just made that up.
You're good.
But what did the Native American person or you know, whoever was conveying the story to you tell you about the shadow people and the connection to it? Because they, you know, this is something that's brought up in the show. It's brought up in the lore. It's brought up in a lot of scenarios.
Yeah, so there's different levels of actual entities, and to them, they're completely real, like they exist alongside us in an alternate dimension. And right in there is also the ancestors of the past, and also entities and beings from the future that have different abilities. So that would include like the extraterrestrial phenomenon, the sky people, star people, but also a lot of interesting stuff when it comes to the shadow people and figures and the shapeshifter entities and things like that. Been nicknamed, you know, skinwalkers because of the local culture around the TV show and around the Navajo tribe and that whole
Hmm.
specific location. But the shadow figure phenomena and the beings of light, entities of light, and other figures that appear in repeated forms and types is a very common thing. Like, for example, a repeated figure in my childhood when I would wake up in my bedroom with like sleep paralysis was often either this old lady or standing by my bed, or it was a man with a hat on. And I've
Oh
learned
man.
the man with the hat, right?
Oh dude, you have oh man, yeah, keep going. Oh god.
Yeah. So see, I used to be terrified of these characters
Ooh.
like they were
The
demons
man
or
in the
something.
hat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, Hatman. So my
I,
real
I
quick,
don't know about that.
my potential future girlfriend, who's my best friend,
Potential
she and
future
I-
girlfriend. Who's
yeah,
my
yeah.
best.
There's levels to this.
What?
Actually,
What?
I
Did
interviewed
you
her on my
just,
channel. It's
say
on
that
there.
on the live?
Oh yeah, she knows.
Okay. all
She's
right.
watching. She knows. She knows what's happening. She and I were talking the other night because one of my friends. I'll get into this part later. Because I'd love to hear Carl's take on it, and you too, Ty. I had a friend. I'm going to be investigating some things that are going on at his house. He reached out to me because he was like, "You're the only person that I know in my group of friends that knows about these things." But he mentioned his son seeing Hatman, and then my best friend was talking to me about a dream that she had as a child, and she doesn't really know about Hatman like that. She knows some things, but she's an abductee. We're pretty sure. And she was like, "Yeah, I would always see this man with a hat," and I'm just like, "What?" Because like this was all happening like just at once. Like this was all within like an hour. Like I had a conversation with him and then her, and I had a shared dream with one of my best friends when I was a kid. I saw
Mm.
two men in my living room standing side. They were twins, both wearing hats. I get on the school bus the next day, and my friend Steve was like, "I had a really weird dream last night that there were two twins standing in my living room wearing hats." And I'm like, "Dude, what the fuck?" Like, so I'm getting goosebumps, man. Like, this is real. Oh God. Woo!
Yeah.
It's
It's
intense.
a very common theme. And what's interesting is that it's also global. It doesn't matter if you're in Hawaii or Africa or wherever, you get the same kind of characters that show up. And the common interpretation of it, especially in the media and in chat groups, is usually very negative. A lot of times people convey that it's like demonic or whatever, but honestly, like now that I've done the work, these individuals and characters are sort of like personifications or demiurges of your subconscious that sort of emerge, and they serve a specific function in reality, but they're also like a conscious being. I don't know how to describe it. They're a higher dimensional entity. So the man in the hat in Native American traditions, his name is actually Eatoy. And he
Wow.
has a real name, and he's often depicted on petroglyphs all over the world as a figure with horns or a hat with a staff or in like a robe or tunic. And he's coming in and out through interdimensional portals, and he helps assist either stop cataclysms and natural disasters from occurring, or he helps basically through time travel, transcendental time travel and everything, going through portals through the earth. He appears and he will show up in people's bedrooms. He's depicted in petroglyphs as a figure with a hat standing in or above like a maze, a glyph of a maze or a spiral. And basically what he does is he shows up right at the edge. He can travel in between dimensions and in and out of our physical reality. And he will basically take you and pull your consciousness into an out-of-body experience. But it often begins as this sensation of sleep paralysis where you're trapped because you don't want to go and you have prejudices about the experience and you're kind of scared and have no idea, and you've been taught wrong your whole childhood about what's going on. But once I've learned what these figures are and what they represent, basically what happens is like Eatoy will show up. I'll go into this sleep paralysis episode. I go into this level of meditation that this figure Eatoy sort of pushes me into or pulls me into. And it's basically like forcing you into retuning your signal. So your consciousness is like always stuck on this physical reality, like you're hung up on one radio station and you can't get off. But Iatoi shows up and he just starts turning your dial, and it will feel like your whole bed is shaking, the whole thing's vibrating, and then you'll have these like out of body experiences, or like a vision or a dream, or you'll feel like you're flying. And if you don't have any idea what's going on, it can be like really terrifying, or you can descend into kind of like a lower vibrational level, kind of a thing where you have to face your fears, kind of like a nightmare realm. But if you kind of know what to do and you've done some meditation work, you can rise above that and actually go places, sort of meet ancestors, do all these like special things that the psychic spies at Stanford Research Institute used to do for the Army, and what they're trying to do at the Gateway Institute and all that. Those are sort of built into our reality, and the Native American Indigenous people seem to know that, and that's what the petroglyphs all over the world depict, and all that. But in those dimensions and in those realms, like you basically, that's where you can encounter these other dimensional entities like ultra-terrestrials or extraterrestrials or other parallel versions of yourself or reality, almost like the multiverse. And it's pretty wild.
I often talk about the connection between psychedelics and these planes, and maybe that they're gateways, not to go all Rogan on you, but the DMT experience, and how I definitely met someone or something, and I felt like I was out of my body in a different place, and that I shouldn't have been there, and this thing knew I shouldn't have been there, or knew I shouldn't have been where I was, and that, I don't know, just it was just like this really uncomfortable experience, but also very enlightening. But when I snapped back into my body, it was very clear that like I was separated for a time. Like maybe I wasn't, maybe I was physically here, but mentally or something, a part of me was somewhere else, because it was as real as this now, but it was not at the same time, if that makes any sense. Anyone who knows or has done it will clearly understand what I mean, but it's so hard to convey. But as I usually say, everything, this road I was on, it looked like the universe, but the sky and the ceiling or the floor, it was all one, and it looked like the universe. It was like a glass crystal version of the universe, and there was just this being there. And as soon as I got to him, I snapped back into my body.
Yeah,
it was just very weird. And what do you hold to that notion?
So imagine like with the same kind of analogy, like our consciousness or our brain is hardwired to a specific signal, like we're stuck on one station or one dial on the radio, right? And then let's say you take a psychedelic or something like that, a hallucinogenic or whatever. And I don't even like the word hallucinogenic because it sounds wrong, like everything you're experiencing is not real or something.
Right. And I've never actually hallucinated anything to the point like taking mushrooms or acid. Like I've never hallucinated like they show you in the movies.
Right.
And so like I never really understood where that came from.
Yeah. So imagine if you like take a circuit board that's operating and it's always been working in a specific function, and then you pour water on it or liquid mercury or other things to sort of scramble that signal, and it forces it to retune to a different dial. But so like something very natural like psilocybin or mushrooms would probably give you a very organic, earthy, Gaia-like experience where you're connected with the oneness of nature, because it's like a mushroom, a fungus going right up in there into the circuit board, into the molecules of your blood-brain barrier, and creating a new connection to where you're perceiving reality in a different way. Because normally you're tuned in to only see the colors of the rainbow. There's like like 17 colors in the rainbow or something like that. I don't even know how many. I don't want to try and count right now. But we're kind of stuck in this paradigm, in this one prism or spectrum of color and sound that we have as our physical reality, that is bound by the limitations of the speed of light and our known physics. But there's this whole other spectrum outside of that. Like what we can see is like 0.001% of the entire spectrum. There's like shrimp and birds and animals that can see, and even insects that can see way beyond us into infrared and ultraviolet. And we just have these huge blind spots. So imagine you take a psychedelic and it suddenly gives you this sort of like different set of goggles in order to perceive reality outside just the normal spectrum into this totally different mosaic. And there's other ways to do that as well, even without using any kind of enhancement drugs or anything. Like in the Monroe Institute with the Gateway, they use binaural sound tones, and they really put a lot of emphasis on the music and the sound and the audio. But what it really is the magnetic frequencies of the headphones resonating. So you've got these big magnets in your headsets.
These headphones on you?
Yeah, so you put these headphones on, and sometimes even a halo. Like I'm like an affiliate with my friend that makes some that you can put on your head and turn them on, and it creates a magnetoelectric field like around your brain, and it harmonizes the left and right hemispheres of your brain. It activates the pineal gland and basically does all that kind of stuff. But then you can intentionally tune it. Whereas like when you take a psychedelic, you have to do all the dosage and the set, and your attitude's got to be just right. Whereas you can do more like Buddhist meditation and what we joke around and call it like techno shamanism, where you're doing like meditation, but you're using magnetic headsets and using resonant harmony music and all that combined with these mental frameworks that you use that are like the same kind of stuff the CIA was doing for the, back during the Cold War. So you combine all of that together and you can kind of harness those same dimensions and different opportunities just the same as psychedelics, in my experience, even more accurately.
Wow.
And then one more thing, if you add on top of that, there are locations on the earth where there are places where it's amplified, like Skinwalker Ranch, Mount Wilson Ranch, Bradshaw Ranch, all certain locations where there's like X points, cross points in the electromagnetic field, where when you walk in there, it does the same thing. It amplifies your consciousness and makes all those experiences kind of turn on.
So have you ever tried, and you can say, you can't say it, have you ever tried any of like a psychedelic trip at any of these places?
Never when I travel or go into any other places or anything like that. I've never done any psychedelics.
Because that would be a wild. Imagine being able to say like, I took a bunch of mushrooms and then went to Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh my God.
I've done mushrooms just for like PTSD stuff at home, just for healing and things. But I usually feel like when I'm out in locations for like research, right now the cultural stigma is that discredits the work. So when I travel and go, I don't do anything like that.
Right.
Other than maybe smoke a little bit of weed, but I do have a medical card.
Have you ever had a breakthrough experience with dimethyltryptamine before?
I've never done DMT.
I have,
Never have.
and it's amazing some of the things both of you are talking about. Like Ty was just saying, like I experienced presences, things that I know happened that like I took back with me, but I couldn't like describe them properly. Like I know that I saw colors that aren't in our regular spectrum, for example. I know that I had like 4 or 5 dimensional perception, all this weird stuff. And it's funny because once you come back to just like your regular waking conscious state, you can't hone in on those things, like, but you know they happened. But it felt like I was visiting like a geographical location. It's like my body went on pause, but like my spirit decided to take a journey. It changed my life. Like I went from being like really just like agnostic, almost atheist in certain ways, and it turned me into a spiritual individual. Like I meditate frequently now, so everything you're talking about right now, like this is absolutely my wheelhouse. And I really truly believe that these are important sentiments.
And you just had on, now to bring it kind of back, you just did a video today with a gentleman. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Was he a part of these drum circles that they've been doing at Skinwalker Ranch and other places, or is he just an expert in those kind of chants?
He's an expert. He's inherited his great grandfather's inheritance and responsibility of basically knowing the entire trade route and migrational route of all these indigenous artifact locations and petroglyphs and
Oh,
megaliths, and he knows where there's like pyramids and mounds and burials all over
Wow.
North America where people have no idea where they are.
Oh,
And I started like finding a bunch of stuff on accident, just going and doing what I do with the meditation and going out to these petroglyph sites. I started having experiences and finding things, you know. And so he started like hounding me, being like, hey, we should work together.
yeah.
And so now
Well,
we totally work together. And
well, what would you say to these? So these chants and you know, I've always had this like kind of like sneaking suspicion that something with frequency and I think even Tesla said, you know, if you want to understand the universe or something to that degree, you know, I'm paraphrasing that sound. What is it? Vibration.
I think it was
No.
frequency, energy,
Frequency.
vibration. Yeah.
Yeah, those three: frequency, resonance, and whatever. So, what do you say to the idea that there is some sort of phenomena that can be accessed by a certain frequency or resonant tone or these chants? Like, do you? I mean,
Yeah.
do you think it's possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there are all ways of hacking the mind and hacking reality in the way that you would sort of like bend the rules of the matrix in a way. And
Right.
so in that same line of what we've been talking about, the indigenous people knew these locations that were potent, you know, and they often put rock art or petroglyph art there that often people look at now and they just say, oh, that's just like graffiti that ancient people did or whatever. And it's just like little stick figures of people, or it looks like plasma forms or whatever, and they dismiss it. But when you actually talk to the people that are connected with the heritage, like you were talking, Thomas, the higher dimensional way of seeing things was more of a way of life. Like when we're just always stuck in first person point of view, and then we have like daydreaming going on, like this chatter in our heads. But when you have that higher dimensional way of seeing things, it's like not only are you in first person point of view, but you see this sort of augmented spiritual reality over top of everything. You have this third person point of view, almost like you're hovering up above yourself, this disassociated perspective looking down at everything.
Mm.
And then there's this connected point of view that they would go into the essence of reality, like that whole everything being energy, frequency, and vibration, to the point that you're a part of all that, this oneness. In ancient Buddhism, they called it Advaita Vedanta, which meant, or Vedanta, which meant non-dual, like you are not separate. So imagine like if you go out and you look across the horizon and you see the landscape in a mountain, and you stop and you look at it like an indigenous person or a Buddhist would, they would look at that mountain and maybe ask themselves like, okay, so I'm seeing that mountain, but where is that seeing actually happening? Is it happening at the surface of the mountain? Is that where I'm seeing it? Or is it happening in the light waves in between the mountain and my eyes? Is it happening at the surface of my eyes or right through the pupil? Or is it happening, where is it really occurring? Is it occurring in the back of my brain in here? Or is it happening at the surface of the sun? Because without the light coming down and bouncing off of the mountain, I wouldn't even see anything. It would just be darkness. And you realize that it requires all of the above. This whole entire matrix, this whole oneness is not separate. There's you are part of the wholeness all the way out through the cosmos. And when you start to realize it in that perspective, and you go within yourself through these spiritual methods and go to these locations, these symbols, when you look at them and start to fathom them with what they really mean with this other dimensional point of view, they become more like doorways for consciousness for these types of things like out-of-body travel or astral projection or remote viewing. The indigenous people would go sing or drum or chant in these locations, and they would do it in conjunction with the rotation of the Big Dipper around the North Star and get really elaborate with it. They would build these Stonehenges and pyramids and rock circles and get all into it, like they're basically building an antenna or trying to hack into the cosmos. And then they would do these rituals for days and days. And the whole point was basically to reach out and to make contact with Iatoi or with the other dimensions, or to travel through space-time, or to communicate with these other locations, like so that you could talk to Teotihuacan or talk to the pyramids in Egypt or whatever, that they were doing the same thing, which kind of explains why there was this time period on Earth where everybody was building mounds and pyramids and
Is that,
Stonehenge. And
I was just going to go there. So you think that they were able to talk to each other that way? Through
yeah, I
these?
think it was like a type of
Whoa.
archaic Wi-Fi, like a
Oh, man, that's
telepathic
awesome.
Wi-Fi. Yeah, because
That
I've
makes so much sense.
accidentally had those experiences by going to these locations and sitting at night, meditating for hours, and you
man.
have these experiences, and you start
That's
to
a theory I
understand what
haven't
it's all about.
thought. Yeah, that is a theory I've never really thought about. Wow, because I mean, and like all these religions or cultural stories, you know, they talk about the flood, and then this messenger comes and basically shows them how to rebuild society, right?
Mhm.
We see this through almost. I mean, I've yet to find a religion that doesn't have some sort of flood story, and it just always bothered me that the history that I was being taught never took account like all the similarities. Like you're telling me all these people never had any contact with each other, yet they all build these very remarkably similar, very, 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 very complex, not just mathematically, but astrologically, and physically. Just the stones
Right.
themselves are like, you know, the whole rollers and the wood rollers. I don't buy it. I don't buy it with some of the sizes of the limestone, you know, or some of the pieces of the King's Chamber alone. That way, like it's like 13 cars worth of weight, and you're telling me they rolled that thing, that like, you know, 7
Right.
miles. I just don't buy it. So
Either.
I think that they had some sort of technology that we don't know about, and could it have been a technology like that, where it's not really technology, it's really like a mind hack?
Yeah, where it gets really validating to me when I go down the avenue, especially when I go in person, is you find that it's there in reality so much that, like, for example, Chaco Canyon, you could go to Chaco Canyon, and the way just like simple petroglyphs are on the wall and pictographs, and the way that the structures are built are in this profound alignment with the stars and the cosmos and the solar cycles and all this. But not only that, they're lined up so that you could follow the way that like a wall is going east to west. And if you had a laser pointer or a GPS and you could follow in a straight line for like exactly like 300 miles or something, you all of a sudden hit another settlement, like in exactly a straight line, like how they would have even known that. But when you go to these central hubs where these migrational lines over hundreds, if not thousands of miles connect, all of a sudden the petroglyphs get so elaborate that they'll have star systems like the Pleiades and things that they shouldn't have even known, because there wasn't telescopes to even see into the sky that far. So you have to wonder, like, how were they communicating and seeing? How did they know? Like the Nazca lines, where everything was built like in this precision, as though it was supposed to be seen from outer space, almost from Google Earth view. But it makes sense if you're in that third person point of view, you're remote viewing, out of body traveling. If anybody's ever explored that and experienced it, there are like charts. There are like actual astral plane doorways and maps and like things that have existed in the stone of the earth that mankind have put here, like markers, and like guides and directors and things since the beginning of time almost. And
Right.
so it's all connected to that, and to lead us to unlock our consciousness and explore who we really are and our potential, because it's all written in the stone, it's in the face of the earth, and it's unavoidable. And you just have to get out and kind of get back in touch with it.
Yeah.
Totally agree with that sentiment. I believe that we should look to, native culture, to think about what we could be doing as far as getting back into touch with nature and the
Well,
land
you
that
know,
we live on.
what's funny is and yeah, someone brought up my mic. Carl
Mm.
cursed my whole setup tonight. I swear to God.
What?
we
Wait,
talked
how?
we talked about this before we went live, that nothing of mine was working. And he said that it's not the first time that it's happened. So like none of my equipment's working correctly right now.
It's like a
My
hitchhiker.
camera won't work. My microphone's gain is way too loud, and it's never changed settings.
Damn it, Carl.
Carl, I don't know, man. He's done something to my stuff.
That's funny.
But I just if it is sounding bad, just let me know. Maybe I'll try to swap it out. I just watched Dr. Greer's new film, The Lost Century and How to Reclaim It. And publicly, I'm not a huge fan of Stephen Greer, but this film, I think, I actually liked it a lot more because it wasn't so tied to the UFO thing, and he wasn't pushing his views of UFOs. He was talking about, like legitimate alternative propulsion and energy devices that have been suppressed and different things. This whole how we're 100 years behind of where we should be, and how I don't know if either of you have seen the film yet, but
Yeah, I have.
someone also brought up the Black Knight satellite. Yeah, that's just another thing that I think gets touched on in it. So Dr. Greer's new film, I think, is definitely worth the watch for anyone who wants to know. I
think that's fair.
Yeah, I mean,
I do.
his films are generally like well received. It's
Mhm.
just him. It's his eagerness to make money off of
The
the.
CE5 one though felt, or the one maybe right after that felt kind of like regurgitated, but his body of work is mostly more than watchable. At least I think there's good information in there.
Yeah.
I'd agree that people should go and watch this one. You should look at all angles of this.
So do you think the petrodollar has caused some secrecy? Do you think that these tycoons, these people that pretty much run the world, there's like 15 billionaires who run the 9 companies that produce all of the news and media in the world? I mean, do you think there's this real this suppression of this technology that could change the world overnight? It's a good question. It's one that I think affects all of us.
I think the hidden secret technology that's kept from us and all that is actually a lot scarier to me than the UFOs, than the
Yeah.
real phenomena myself. I
Yeah.
would rather encounter the real phenomena than the government stuff. And I think there's a lot of misunderstandings there. And I think Greer is on track with that. As much as he is trying to whistleblow, I think he's right as far as we've had knowledge of this kind of technology, and we've had the technology to do some pretty mind-blowing stuff. And I know and have been told stories, and I have friends that work in these places that have told me things that they've worked on and seen that, I mean, would convince pretty much anybody. And especially if you get into researching beyond just physical craft, looking at what they're building as far as flying saucers and drone AI powered technology and how long they've been doing that, is pretty wild. But when you get into the directed energy systems where they don't even have to have a physical object, they can fake everything, or they can even use directed energy systems and laser systems or satellites, and they can implant with frequencies and stuff.
Make you think you've had an alien abduction
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, they can implant, and they've been doing experiments with this stuff since clear back in the 1960s and probably earlier. and it has origins with a lot of the same spooky people. And that's where it gets weird, is that,
Do you think that the Men in Black could be a product of such thing?
oh
You know
yeah,
how the
yeah,
Men in Black have often been spoken about, like how they don't know how to do basic things. You know,
they're
maybe
slowly even coming out with now how they can use your Wi-Fi routers with AI to basically bounce signals through your house, and they can tell exactly positionally where you are and kind of what you're doing just off your Wi-Fi
Oh
my goodness.
man.
signals.
So
So they can tell proximity changes based on Wi-Fi rebound. So when you get closer or farther away to the Wi-Fi router, or if you're
So
carrying
it's
your
acting
phone,
like a
it
sonar.
can create like a sonar,
right, yeah.
like almost a bat sonar, and they can
Right.
tell exactly where you are in your house. Now
Oh
imagine
wow.
they extend that out, like you were talking about Nikola Tesla, where they have systems that are actively reading the electromagnetic field of the earth. They can tell by your brainwave patterns, and those what would just to us look like lines on a screen. A computer and artificial intelligence can interpret all that data at so much faster
So
than
much
we can
faster
even
than
fathom,
human.
that it can actually put it into almost visual images and read your mind, and they can watch what you're thinking about in a
Yeah.
sort of an abstract form. And they've shown that they can do that now. They've probably had that technology for quite a while.
Predictive software is not a joke, and
That's frightening.
it's frighteningly accurate.
Yeah.
Like for people who will say like, oh, I swear my phone listens to me, like I just talked about Amazon, or I just talked about buying a specific
Yeah.
pair of shoes on Amazon, and then it gets, recommended to me. It's like,
Yeah.
no, it's not, it's targeting you. it's not like it's this magic trick. No, it's predictive algorithms, and yes, it may even be listening to you. Who knows? I don't think it's been proven, but I think it's often been.
Oh, it does. It
Yeah.
definitely
Well,
does.
yeah. So imagine Greer, a lot of his original whistleblower work was him talking about Project Bluebeam, where they'd have the technology to fake with realistic holograms or holographic technology, where they could make you see and even touch a UFO and think it was real, but it's all just microwave plasma technology and things. And a lot of that's real, and he's talking about it. But part of it's that's suspect to me is that Greer is in all these photos with like Bigelow and a lot of other kind of interesting people at the Rockefeller compound all the time. And they're part of this whole
Yeah.
group called the Aviary that has
Yeah.
done a lot of the testing and development to build that technology, like Project Bluebeam and all that stuff. So he's kind of like part of all of it, or was part of all of it, maybe is still. And it's sort of, it's all fishy to me. So there's levels of that you have to be careful of, where this is why I focus a lot on my own personal grounding in reality, my own mindfulness work, and I explore all these aspects of meditation and all that. So if things like that occur, I'm not just duped, I'm
Right.
I sort of have a spectrum of experience to be able to know whether things feel more artificial or not, or
It
at least
allows you
hope
to
to have a chance.
discern between, something that is natural versus something that is not. That's and Ty and I have talked to some people over at that have done work at the ranch, have been present on the ranch, and there's this theory that perhaps there is a real phenomenon there, but what's been happening is that some arm of the military is using that as a cover for them to actually test out like psychotronic weapons and such, because you
Yeah,
can't tell the difference. And that to me, that like scares
straight
the
up
hell out of me.
Bigelow and his guys were doing that on some of my friends, like Chris Bartell that
Chris
worked
Bartell's
there.
a good friend
Yeah,
of the
you
show.
probably had him on the show. Like Chris Bartell,
yeah.
he was taken a few times to Reno to get MRIs done to see if he had Havana syndrome and stuff,
Yeah.
because they were probably doing some of that experimental stuff there alongside of the phenomenon.
His theories blew me away, like
Mm.
blew me away, and he's hard on Bigelow, like he's hard on Bigelow and what Bigelow was doing. Bigelow owned the other ranch at the same exact time. What was the what is it, the
So Skinwalker Ranch and Mount Wilson Ranch were the
Mount
two.
Wilson Ranch? Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
What's the deal with this Blind Frog Ranch place?
Uh,
Is that
uh,
something we can even touch on?
I have friends that'll probably be coming out with stuff about that in the near future. I think I'm still in a position where I can't talk about that, but
All right. I think
there's
that says a lot, though. I think that says enough.
fair enough. Fair
I
enough.
think
I
that
won't.
says
I will just say that like there is real things there at Blind Frog Ranch as far as like artifacts. So there is an indigenous burial site there. There are. I know I've seen multiple old maps and mining maps. I've been shown secret stuff and all kinds of things. I know where there is stuff there, but it isn't on his property. I might get in trouble for even saying that. It's not directly on the Blind Frog Ranch.
Right.
And I find it unfortunate on the TV show. I hope they fix it in the next season, but a lot of the stories that you think are all happening in Utah are sort of transplanted from other places from a long time ago, and they're reenacted really bad.
Yeah.
And to me, it was just too much over the line to where it wasn't authentic enough to where, like, when the History Channel came and filmed with me at Mount Wilson Ranch for the Beyond Skinwalker episode, that was like, they showed up and they were like, hey, okay, take us up here and show us where this is at. And then the host would walk alongside me and he was like asking me questions like a journalist. And the cameras are all just Paul was a straight up
journalist.
Yeah. So we would just go up to a spot. They would say rolling action or whatever. And then Paul would just start asking me questions. And it was the real deal. And what happened was the way it happened. And nobody told me what to say. Nobody told me to repeat any lines or how to fix anything. Nothing. Right. It was just like the real deal. We just got it as we went. But
it was like raw.
At Blind Frog Ranch, there has been actual scripts found.
Staging.
Real scripts found, like printed off and stuff. Yeah.
So staging.
The whole thing is scripted. Yeah.
So that bothers me, and I think a lot of people like Mick West right now. I mean, you see Mick West attacking Skinwalker Ranch right now for their recent episode with the 2,000 frames per second. The what looks. I mean, listen. The close-up of it, I'll give Mick West this. It does look very insect-like or bird-like.
It could be.
You know what I mean? But I can also see from and people have to remember that like the guys from the show, like they film, but they don't have say in like what gets put into the show.
Not at all.
That's all Hollywood. That's all the production team. Who knows? Travis might have even been told afterwards, like, "Hey, look at this again," and they were probably like, "Shit."
Yep.
And then it ended up in the show just because the production team maybe thought no one would look too close at it. So I try to give the benefit of the doubt in those kind of situations. But in the field, I mean, I could see why they would have got excited over that. It looked from a distance, it looked great to me. I was like, wow, that looks really cool. That anomalous. But of course, the close up does show like a flickering, and
right.
That's it. It's a tragedy on these kind of shows that really rely on some sort of suspension of belief in some rights to the general audience.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you think about those kind of moments on these shows? Do you think they're detrimental to the surrounding lore and stake? We saw what the Green Street thing did for Skinwalker Ranch.
Ugh.
Yeah. I think that everybody has a different spectrum of their threshold where they throw their hands up and decide that it's dumb or whatever, or it's not even worth looking at. And that spectrum crosses over like an overlap with the people who are screaming that you're not releasing any data. So on the one hand, it's like, you're not showing anything. Why don't you show us this? And how come you're never revealing anything? And then you reveal stuff and you show things. And when the History Channel was there and that's what they did get, and they put it in, then everybody complains about it. So you can't win either which way you go. And so you kind of try to shoot in the middle. And when it does go through the funnel of the actual television networks and what they want, the outcome that they want. If they're trying to get to a certain point where they're getting evidence of UFOs, the editors and the people up at the top, when it hits the cutting room floor, it does get funneled down to a certain direction.
Yeah.
Hopefully the idea is, if there is enough legitimate stuff going on, that you have piles of that to the point to where the threshold is so high that, and the data is so compelling. That's what I feel like happened when they came to Mount Wilson Ranch, and they actually had to create a whole second bonus episode they're going to put in at the end of the season, because they had to tell one whole story of what occurred up there, and they had to cut so much out because even this amazing paranormal thing that they filmed down in the meadow, they had to save for a cut out of the main episode because it just didn't quite fit in the plot line. So
Right.
Yeah, the next episode is Mount Wilson Ranch Part 2.
Right.
So I'm actually super excited about that. And that was why I was like, I want to get this guy on like super quick, because I just binged all 4 episodes that are out, and I was like, oh,
man.
I really
like it.
I really am I'll say this, I'm enjoying it because I think this whole attraction of Skinwalker Ranch and this revitalization of this research into these places by a new team, and then kind of spearheading this beyond Skinwalker Ranch thing as well, with them correlating it, directly with the main show, having Travis and Eric in it. I think just it's covering a lot of bases, and I think it's kind of creating this like network of like investigation into these high strangeness areas. And I really loved it. So that was a huge part of getting you here.
Yeah, thanks, man. I thought they did a really good job. I was really pleased with the way that the film crew came and handled everything, and they got right in it. And like, you're right, the episode that has come out was really focused on like just introducing the ranch, catching up everybody to what's going on and how it's connected to Skinwalker Ranch, with Bigelow owning both properties and who was there. And so the whole thing was bringing everybody up to speed. And then it honed in on setting off the explosions and the dynamite up at the lava vent tubes, trying to get access into the underground. And all of that ended up being like the big finale, because it's like this big explosive finish with the dynamite going off over the cave and getting pushed off the mountain. And they show the drone crash, and the drone, the GPS data was convinced that it was flying over the Bermuda Triangle.
Bermuda Triangle. I was like, what?
I mean, they could have done a whole show just around that drone and all the data off of that, and that ended up just being a small part of it,
And
more of that.
And that I especially, oh my god! And what I loved, what I really find fascinating about this show is they're kind of like skipping all the maybe more mundane experiments that they did at the beginning of like season 1 and 2 of Skinwalker, and it's just like, let's go right to dynamite and blowing this shit up. It's like, well, how do you want to go about today's investigation? Well, we're gonna blow a hole in that, and hopefully, like, we'll get in. I was like, okay, cool. Like episode 1, we're using dynamite. Okay, let's.
Yeah, we went right for it. So that was one of the main big things. But we did a lot up there that didn't even make it in the final edit. Like after we set off the explosions that night, everybody went and filmed like a walk down in the meadow where this animal mutilation had occurred. And that's going to be the whole bonus episode, is the crew filmed and had an encounter with something super bizarre in the trees down there that was moving around. Yeah, like these red orbs moving around, looking back at them. And I haven't even seen the footage yet. So I'm like, I don't know. I guess I'll see it, what it was. But then that night, like, half of the crew was having nightmares. One guy woke up and was like, yelling in his sleep out like he was having a night terror. And like, there's a lot of stuff that none of that supernatural stuff and paranormal things that occurred even made it in the episode, because
so you see what I mean about the
That's
Hollywood.
what I want to see.
So the end of the day, the producers and the because I came from that world.
Yeah.
Trust me, I know all about it. like, you know, you shoot the the way you shoot is you shoot much more than you need, because you never want to
Yeah.
have not enough footage. You always want to have more than you need. So a
Right.
lot does get put on the cutting room floor, but it sucks when those good moments get put on the cutting room floor because of time restraints or whatever. There's so many reasons for that kind of stuff. But I like that they're going back and they're like, this is worth a whole episode, so let's do a part 2.
Yeah,
Because
and it's really tantalizing to the whole network when the film crew, and everybody comes back, and they've been to multiple locations that are supposed to be connected to Skinwalker Ranch. But when they came to Mount Wilson Ranch, they had a totally different level, like a whole next level experience there. And so the possibility to directly connect it with its own show, with its own supported funding and research, because historically it is tied straight to Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, it's all there and huge, and we're talking about all that now. But what's cool about Mount Wilson Ranch is you can watch it on TV and then go like right over to the Patreon page. If you're driving through Pioche, Nevada, you can get a day pass or an overnight pass for like $100 basically, or a day pass is $40, and they'll let you actually go walk around and take pictures and explore the place. It's not closed.
Wow.
So it has a whole hotel, a saloon, the whole area there, and the owners want to have the research be an open, active research place where people can come and experience it.
That's
and like,
great.
and let's be upfront. It's also of them, because do they live on the ranch or do they live off the ranch now?
Both. So they live there at the ranch through the whole summertime and caretake it, and then in the wintertime they go back and forth to New Jersey where they have family and kids and stuff.
So not only are they getting the research done, but they're also, they've created a self-sufficient kind of research effort.
Yeah, so like it's the whole place
money making operation, but it's
yeah, so it's historically it's got a whole historical saloon. The hotels are there. There's like up to 25 people can stay there. And so it's like, what do you do with the property? You close it all down just so you can come in and film there, or you work to keep it an open source place where you can do comparative data. Other people can come and experience it. And then as they, join the club through Patreon, they can afford to at least like clean the rooms and keep the lights on and keep it update. The idea is we want to develop it to where we have live streaming cameras going all the time there. We set up the Sky 360 cameras to do the sky watching. And then, whole teams can actually come in and stay for a week at a time. There's even an option on there. You can request to have me come, and I'll even be there and hike you to all the places and show you where all the stuff is, tell you the history and all of it. And I think it's like the first place that's been researched officially by NIDS like that we aren't like afraid to try that. We're not afraid that somebody's going to die. Nobody's got hurt yet. All the experiences, there's been some people get spooked and leave early, but most of the time the experiences have been really positive. And so it's been something that the property owners have been willing to do and want to keep it going that way. So it's kind of cool.
I'd love to get out there.
I think there's this misconception in the UFO topic that making money is like, if you try to make money off the phenomenon, then you're a grifter or you're a fraud. I think that connotation is definitely not. It's bad for business, because like, again, if we want people committed to this, they need to be able to sustain life. Like, eating is essential. So you can't just do this stuff for free and 100% of your time.
We're in a content creator capitalist America society now, to where like, a cute girl can get on and jiggle and make more than a doctor can in a month, like more in a month than a doctor does in a year.
Preach.
It's not even, so this idea that we're supposed to feel ashamed for making enough money to get fuel for our truck to go explore places and go hike around is kind of a joke.
It's
That's
only
like a
bad when you're
that's
lying.
like a boomer
That's it.
argument that doesn't even apply to our society anymore.
And if
to
you're
me.
if you make up stories though, and then try to sell it as fact, and then write a book about it, like I'm not gonna say any names, but we know people like that. That's when it's an issue. But if you're just like if your heart's in the right place, I mean, there's people that I watch in our community that every now and then I'm like, here's $5 because we're all out here working hard. You obviously you're out there on the ground doing things. Ty's doing a million things a day, so am I, and it's like we just want to survive, but we love this subject so much. We
Yeah.
want to be able to spend more time talking about it as opposed to some of the other things we do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all I do is harass people to come on the show. I literally spend
Really
90% of my time I just spend harassing people.
Yeah, you're the ultimate pest, right?
Yeah, that's my motto is just
Hey, speaking
annoy
of
them.
pests and annoying, UFO Shane is in the chat. I'm just kidding, Shane. We love you. He's been begging for a
Shane.
shout out in the chat. Shane, we absolutely love you, and we're so happy that you're here with us, man. We love Shane.
Shane supports. He's an inner circle member of every one of my Patreons that I help build. My Native American friends have a Patreon to try and teach their workshops and have the time
That's
to do
awesome.
that. Mount Wilson has one. I've got one. Shane's part of all of them. So thanks, man.
Yeah,
I
he's always
appreciate it, dude.
Shane's a great guy. And
He's
Yeah,
awesome.
Shane's the best.
so I want to talk about I want to talk about the commonalities between these places. So this frequency, this frequency that's often talked about, it's between 1.6 and beyond Skinwalker. It's ranged from like 1.6 to 1.7. Both are frequencies that are unavailable for the public to transmit on, and it's more for space to Earth transmissions. So, what do you get? What's the deal with that? What do you think is going on there? And why is that signal not only on Skinwalker Ranch, but a lot of these places with high strangeness?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out. I think we're exploring that at multiple different angles, from everything from the geology, like you mentioned earlier, how I started off, in these videos up just going into cave systems with the Skinwalker Ranch team, not even on the show. And that was a lot of what we were doing, was going up in the Uinta Basin mountains above Skinwalker Ranch, seeing where the aquifer systems all, where the snow melt entered into the mountain, into the cave systems, and went into the basin and came out as the aquifer under Skinwalker Ranch, to see how the flow was, what the caves were like. We even crawled and went inside a bunch of them to look around to see if there was any kind of explanation or connection, because this idea that the aquifer and the water flowing underground through certain geology can create this pulsing frequency, this harmony that either turns on or off, or becomes more or less potent at different times, or maybe is in conjunction when certain stars are overhead and all sorts of bizarre stuff.
Whoa.
But if you want to get strange with it, what we keep finding is almost like these buried, what appear to be like a grid underneath the ground. In the LiDAR scanning, and when we do ground penetrating radar and everything, it's almost like these lines, like a phased array or like a HARP array, almost like an antenna grid underneath the ground. And we can't tell quite how deep it is, but I'm telling you, I've even seen stuff that there's been stuff leaked to me from former NIDS teams, members that work for Bigelow, that they were at Mount Wilson Ranch pretty convinced that there was a giant triangular or pyramidal shaped craft or structure underneath the ground that was pulsing the signal. And they were going there, and they found it because the psychic spies, the remote viewers from the Stanford Research Institute that were working with the Army and the CIA, were looking for relic devices and technology for back engineering programs and all kinds of stuff. And so they zeroed in on some of these places like Mount Wilson and Skinwalker and other spots that they actually went and tried to dig and look for stuff underground. And a lot of it they couldn't find. And we're just now kind of figuring out where those entrances are because they didn't have the technology that we have now. We have the ability to see what they couldn't see and explore the property like they couldn't back then. And a lot of times I don't think they were willing to hike around and do the hard part
Do
like
the
they're willing to do
actual-
now.
Right,
The real
yeah.
Right.
boots on the ground stuff is a lot more difficult than
That's
you think
insane.
sometimes.
You know what
Well,
that makes me think of real quick? Because I've heard rumors about it that there's like a pyramidal structure possibly under Antarctica. Has that ever come up between you and your like inner circle that there's like some sort of structure or device that under the ice that's like I heard that it was interacting with our consciousness in some way. I've heard this rumor
Yeah.
a million times. Like that's what this reminds me of. Do you know? Have you ever heard anything about that?
I think they're all over the planet, man. I think
Really?
I think that's what's at Mount Wilson. I think there's one at Skinwalker. I can't tell if they're some sort of AI driven thing or if it is alien or if it's some sort of a time travel implant, that's put there from the future and they stick it in the earth to emit a frequency to generate evolution or something or consciousness. I don't know. But there's
Jesus.
something to it that when you walk in these areas or you spend time there, it like changes you or it gives you that higher dimensional point of view, that alternate vision. Chris Bartel will talk about how it changed his photography and how the way that he saw the landscape. And all of that's been validated by my Native American friends. But that's the way you're supposed to even look at the petroglyphs in these locations is the way Chris Bartel naturally just hiking around Skinwalker Ranch developed that with his photography.
With the mirror.
His flip vision is a real
Right.
thing that
Yeah.
indigenous people would use crystals and prisms
No
and they would go
way.
up and they would use
And
torchlight.
they'd like reflect it.
Yeah, and they would make holographic vision and suddenly what looks like goats and squiggle lines becomes a face or a doorway, a different
Oh my
shamanic symbol.
God.
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost in plain sight, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It takes that higher dimensional awareness, that different level of focus, or you're just blind to it. It looks like nothing to you.
Wow.
Carl,
when you
where have
have
you
that-
been all my life, man? Oh my God, this is like some of the most
And it's
interesting
been on
shit I've heard all
YouTube.
week, dude.
It's been on YouTube the whole time.
I've been
I mean,
trying to
seriously.
slowly get the word out for the last couple of years because I've stumbled across this stuff on accident, going to places, just hiking, going through a divorce, leaving religion on my own spiritual journey and things. I end up at these petroglyph sites just out of curiosity and having these phenomenal experiences and then trying to answer them. And now I've just gone
Have you
clear
ever
down this road.
Have you ever seen a craft?
A what?
Have you ever seen a craft?
I've seen mostly what would be considered orbs that look like plasma, balls of plasma. I've seen them appear like like in a string of lights, almost like light bulbs turning on one at a time into this big curving structure. I have one whole video of that, but I was right by Area 51, so who knows? If it was one of our craft, this thing was huge and it was sideways coming up out of the ground in a weird spot. But
Right.
I've seen stuff like that, but they've all been more like lights or really bright plasma balls of light and things like that. As far as like an actual metallic craft, I've never seen a flying saucer or anything.
Right.
Most of my experiences have been paranormal or supernatural in nature that way.
Just as extraordinary, if not more.
Well, I think there's a link between them.
Absolutely.
I think I don't know. That's just that's my.
I think they're definitely connected. I think that the real physical craft when they manifest they probably come through and start out almost like that plasma, or that's what they appear as until they fully come through or something. I fully don't understand it before. I've had, the supernatural experiences, like abduction type experiences where it's been like I've been inside a craft, but they're always sort of like a out of body visionary travel like experience where you feel like you're on a spaceship type thing.
Right. And-
Carl,
and-
I have a heavy question for you, if you don't mind answering it. And I don't normally ask people this, but because you and I are both spiritual people, I feel like I can ask you this. How do you feel about the idea of God, of like a creative energy in the universe? Maybe not so much an ultimate superior being, but just source, I guess. How do you interpret that idea and like apply it in your life?
Yeah. I think I kind of end up down that same road as that Advaita Vedanta we talked about earlier,
Hmm.
that non-duality, to where it's paradoxical to me. I think if a being appeared to me or showed up or came down from the sky that fits this description classically of like a god, like a supernatural being that came down in physical form as an embodiment, as a man or deity of some kind, the entire time that I witnessed that, I would also be in that same paradox, wondering, is this Project Bluebeam? Is this? Is it that? Is this coming from my own subconscious? I would be
Right.
questioning, did I just die and I'm having some experience with a alternate version of myself from the future?
Mm,
So I would have this plethora, this spectrum of paradox going on. And ultimately, you realize that if there is a God, and you ever experience that God or witness it in front of you as a person, they're still appearing to you just like that mountain. Where are they appearing? Are they over there or are they in here? Are they coming from there, or where is that witness occurring? Is it happening inside myself, or is the being really there? Sort of like solipsism. It's hard to describe, but
solipsism, right?
right.
Yep.
So you would
I know
never be
exactly
able
what
to
you mean.
ultimately know if that God was a real being or if this was just you actualizing your ultimate connection with your higher self personified outside yourself in a form, or, are you being duped? And so I think ultimately, if anything appeared to me, I would have to pass it through that filter and have questions. And so I think if there is like a God, to me, I giving it like a name, like a being, or personifying it like a person, the closest I can get to that would be like God is like this perfectly balanced, pure, it's just the all. It's just this waveform of consciousness, awareness, this pure energy that flows from all things, that has this perfect relationship with all conscious living things. And I don't know if you can really, I think it almost dumbs it down to make it into like a man. I think
I
Yeah.
agree with
it's
that.
too pure and beyond
It's it's
timelessness
too
for that. Yeah.
Much more complex.
it's too human.
That's a really
To be
amazing
honest.
answer.
It's too human for God to be a man.
Yeah, and I
Right.
think in the
Right.
end, if it appears, it's like if the tree falls in the woods and there's no one there to hear it, doesn't make a sound. When the God appears to me and I witness it, did the God appear to anything if the witness doesn't see it, doesn't perceive it, and doesn't value it? So then I'm mutually and equally a part of its existence. In order for it to even be there, I have to witness it too. So there's this relationship that becomes not separate, this non-dualness, to where if there is a God, we're at one. And that's kind of the same thing Jesus was trying to say, like him and the
Right.
Father are one, and
Well,
I am
if you
him and he
think,
is with us. And people, it just goes right over everyone's head, I think.
well,
But
what does that what does that mean? So is God the ether? Is God the zero? Like,
yeah.
talk about 0 point
The
energy.
uncountable
Is
number.
is it the
Plus the
molecules?
infinite emptiness in between all the
Yeah,
things. Like, let's say you go to the edge of the last particle at the end of space, then you go beyond that into the nothingness. That goes on forever too. And so you
right.
have to think that there's even this non-physical, just realm of awareness, of consciousness, that has to be what it really is.
But yeah, there's a yin and a yang, right?
Maybe it
So
only
Yeah.
exists with observers. It's like this goes into the idea of like quantum agency, where a particle only behaves a certain way. It's like the double slit experiment, that whole bit. There's been research. I've been sharing this on Twitter recently, that there's new data to suggest that consciousness is non-classical. So basically, it doesn't follow the standard rules of what we all agree are Newtonian physics, and then it starts to go into like non-locality and all of that. So
Yeah.
I feel like we're only scratching the surface of where we exist. Like I feel like we probably know very little. Like, seriously, I
Yeah,
don't
and
think
it's
we know much
spooky to
yet.
think that we're already capable and it's that way now. We just have this sort of like blindness or this
Well,
almost like a hypnosis over us that we have to peel back and explore within ourselves to get there. It's pretty fascinating.
yeah, just do a little double down promotion here. Even in the case of Virginia, which we'll be having Marco Leal, who is James Fox's partner for that film. He'll be on the podcast Wednesday. Um, the being from Virginia, one of the doctors had said that it had communicated with him that I feel bad for you because you don't know what you're capable of. So it's it goes back to that sentiment. It's our world. We need to take it, right? So this notion that if nukes are launched, the aliens are going to come down and stop it and protect us all. Like that notion, I think is naive. So that's one thing of Dr. Greer's that I don't like is his perception that all advanced civilization must be therefore um, um, benevolent, right? I think that's a dangerous notion. Richard Dolan has been very vocal about this lately as well, and I think to you, I know you lean more on the supernatural side, but with everything that's going on right now in the world with David Grush and other whistleblowers, Mark Rubio has now come out and said that other high level witnesses in government still with high clearances have come forward to share information about crash retrieval programs. What's your notion on all that? I mean, again, I know you're supernatural, spiritual, paranormal side of things, but what's your view on all the stuff that's going on right now with the world?
I think it's very possible that our government, clear back into World War II and with Project Paperclip and what happened at the end of all that, and
Yeah,
a lot of the secret covert explorations that's gone around the world. What I know now from the different remote viewing and three-letter agency teams and friends that I have, they take it pretty serious to go and look for this stuff, to find artifacts, to try and look for metamaterials, look for anomalous locations, people who have had sightings and experiences. There is some of it that is very serious and looked into. Unfortunately, there's a lot of little cliques of people that like to run around and do get government funding for duping people and duping wealthy people into giving them money to go chase after this stuff too. And so it's a mixed bag. And then on top of that, you have like what we talked about earlier, these people who are running around trying to get it for weapons development for, nefarious reasons and things. And it's interesting. I know people and I have friends that have had witnessed supernatural occurrences or UFO sightings and orbs and seen them drop stuff and go pick it up and then have turned that over to government officials. I know friends and people that have done that. I know I have friends that have been to crash sites and recovered stuff that have things in their possession now. So I think unless I dismiss some of my friends, I have to say that it's possible that the government at a higher level than my buddies are doing the same thing.
Same thing.
At
And
a
so much higher level too as well.
But at the same time, when they're going to come out and say stuff, I think there is some validity to the arguments that they really like to use it as a mask or a cover to hide other things or to make people look left when you should look right and do the whole Kansas City shuffle thing. That happens a lot.
Yeah, not a lot of people like him, but the Rick Doty thing, right? It's like if we can lie to you and tell you it's a UFO when it's really, the newest, advanced craft that we're testing. Of course, we're gonna make you think it's a UFO, because we don't want anyone to know. So that a lie is a lie is a lie. It doesn't matter what it is. And a lot of people give him crap about what he did to people, but again, that's our government doing that. That's not just Rick Doty, right? There's a chain of command that
it is orders.
Is respected there, right? People do think they're doing the patriotic thing, and I think a lot of people have done things in the name of the government, just like they have in the name of God, things that they would not have done otherwise. And it's a sad story. And I think with this topic, there's going to be things that are hard to stomach, but
Sure.
you know, that doesn't stop us from unveiling that truth, right? Or wanting that truth, just because it might be a little, might be a little bloody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people just throw everything out. Like if you, let's say you start looking into Skinwalker Ranch and then you realize there's this messy period of history where there's characters that could have been doing some of that directed energy spoofing,
Yes.
where they're trying to use like inception technology to implant false memories and ideas into people and things. And you can look at all that and be like, oh, well, then you can Stephen Greenstreet it and be like, it's all bogus, then it's all garbage. And you go, well, hold up. What about the Navajo Stonehenge spiral and the petroglyphs and the artifacts, the oral traditions of the locals that goes back thousands of years that connects all the way through this? Are you going to throw all that out too? What about, I've been there and seen stuff and had experiences, and I've seen data and know things that go on behind the scenes. And a lot of that, the synchronicities, the strange, what you would call like right in your face, almost Mandela effect that can happen in places like this can be so wild. What the odds that are so personal to you, like I'll tell you one, like they have found a picture at Skinwalker Ranch, an old black and white photo of a guy that I think the name says Greg Bartle written on it, or Greg Bartel. And the guy looks exactly like Chris Bartel, the security officer. Stuff like that happens all the time. They find there's other stories that are going to come out I can't talk about that are even more mind blowing than that. Like people go to the ranch and then they have no business being there. They just happen to get invited. And then out of a cupboard or some old file cabinet comes a book that has like, it happens to be their family photo album from their great grandma or something bizarre.
Right.
Like there's stuff like that happens at Skinwalker and Mount Wilson. Everybody wants to see like a UFO on camera, but there's a whole spectrum going on. It's super bizarre. That I'm really excited about the fact that at least the History Channel with this Beyond Skinwalker Ranch episode, at least that I was a part of, they let me film all the behind the scenes. They've been letting me upload it all to my YouTube channel. They basically look at it and they go, looks good. And they let me upload it. And I haven't had to do hardly anything like to change it. And the relationship there has been really open. So hopefully the possibility of having way more data come out, way more footage, way more on the fly, the whole spectrum, that doesn't get all edited out. Hopefully we'll start to open way more up. But
that would be
these
wonderful.
networks, they're worried. They want to make sure that this stuff is real. They get picked apart if a bug flies in front of the camera and you put it out there. But I think a lot of that's going to change
right now. Yeah.
But
I mean, listen, like Brandon even messaged me and because I had made a comment about something about Green Street, and he and it had to do with data from the ranch. And he had messaged me saying, don't worry. It was kind of an ominous message, if I will say, but he just said he knows what he's doing, and there's a process in motion. So like I said, in Brandon, I will continue to trust. I think his endeavors and his openness to studying these areas of high strangeness, I think it's a really good it's good to have someone like him. Again, these Bigelow types. Now Bigelow is a little different. I don't know. Bigelow's ties to the government always concern me a little bit. But Fugel, I don't think has that tie to the government like Bigelow does.
Not like Bigelow, no.
Yeah, I think the perception, I mean, Bigelow came right out of the gate, and in the very first article when they admitted that he was buying the ranch, right alongside of him was Colonel Alexander and all these guys. And George
Yeah.
Knapp releases the article in the Las Vegas News or whatever,
Right.
talking about a millionaire buying a haunted ranch or a UFO flying saucer ranch in Utah.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't even mention skinwalkers. They don't mention anything paranormal. It's all about flying saucers. And right out of the gates, it's like they're saying, we're going to be open. This is going to be published. All the research that we're going to do is going to be made available to the public. And that was all quotes from like Colonel Alexander
Yeah.
to the news. And
And
then
none of it's fucking
nothing came out. What happened was everybody got put under NDAs. People were paid off. People were compromised in all sorts of shady ways.
Well, because it goes from being NIDS to OSAP. And in that, once you start taking government money, it's over. Like you can't it's especially at the time, Harry Reid, he had allocated the 22 million and they put it up for bid. Just so happens that Bigelow, wins that bid.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that Bigelow was the only bidder because he was offered it, but that's okay. That it doesn't surprise me. He's interested, whatever. Good. We want someone who's interested. Now, maybe not so much. We, like with this, not to go off subject, but people complained about this new NASA team, this like panel of 16 of people who've never heard of any of them. And they're all like kind of skeptical. I think that's good because if we can flip a bunch of skeptics, that's a much bigger statement than a bunch of, believers going in and saying, yep, there's something worth studying. Because,
Right.
we have a little bit of a bias. So, again, when these things happen to people, I kind of lost my train of thought here now.
No, yeah, I think it's really good that like when Travis Taylor pops up on the Skinwalker show, everybody goes, "Hang on, what is he doing? Like a mole from the Pentagon or something?" And now Jay Stratton's showing up. Even when they came
they did the Stratton experiment, and what pisses people off, like Green Street, is that Jay Stratton talks about these things that happened to him on the ranch, but he spent only like 24 hours on the ranch total.
I know. At the same time, I have to say, people could say the same thing about me. I've got a lot of experience in and around Skinwalker Ranch, but my time actually on the ranch, boots on the ground, and there's maybe 10 hours total. Not even overnight. Not even been into Homestead 2 or any of that. I've just been around the headquarters, the helipad, cattle guard, the dog runs, and all that, and up on the mesa.
They never brought you in?
Well, I've been in the headquarters and out to see the petroglyphs and certain things, but it's always
Homestead 2 or anything.
Not yet.
Wow.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a tight window, like in and out when you get to go and stuff. And so, but Jay, he was in charge of the whole thing. He should have been able to go there, spend a long amount of time. The reason why it's suspect is like, okay, why do they have the persona like they spent a lot of time and they know a lot about the ranch if they weren't really there? How, were they observing it from a distance, and why would they be doing that? Like from satellites, and then what were they testing that would cause them to do that? All those weird questions start to come back up, right?
That is a good question.
Right.
So same with when they came and filmed the Beyond Skinwalker Ranch episode. I love that everybody was like, Andrew Bustamante, why did you guys let someone from the CIA there? I'm telling you, the whole time he was sitting in there, I'm like, I've got his text, like we can talk and we're still friends, but he knows. And I'll look right across from him. I'm like, that he's CIA. They sent some dude from the CIA up to Mount Wilson, and he was there. And the whole time I was like, this guy better not be going through my bags in my room when I'm not looking, like, but I'd say that right to his face. I don't care. There's been spooks and 3-letter agency people at these locations since the beginning.
I'll give him this. He seems pretty genuine. He may even turn out to be like, one of these next, like really respected people that like the Ben Hansons.
But people are not wrong for keeping an eye on it though, and being skeptical and savvy and not being duped.
Again, and that's what I want to ask you. Do you have any intel on how they picked that duo?
No idea. No idea.
where the fuck did they pull these?
No
two
idea.
out of?
I don't know.
They're like, they announced the show, and I was like, okay, all right, cool. I'm like, wait, who?
Even some of the Skinwalker Ranch guys were kind of like,
Wait,
thought, would have been cool just to like team up with me and go do it all. Like, and we talked about that. But, I don't know. When you're also, there's something to be said for when you're doing an experiment that you might end up scrapping, that you have expendables too. So I don't know if they just
well,
they didn't do any marketing or advertising for the show at all. They didn't really even tell anybody it was when it was coming out. It was just like, tonight we've got a bonus, and then they released it, and then here they are.
Yeah,
But-
no, you're absolutely right. They definitely hung it off the back of Skinwalker, because the only thing I noticed about it, I thought it was, honest to God, originally I thought it was, how like Game of Thrones has like an after show,
Yeah.
like where like they get around and like they talk about the
where they
episode,
powwow at the headquarters and
Yeah.
chat like a podcast. Yeah.
like a podcast. I thought it was one of those, to be honest.
Right.
And then I find out, no, it's not. It's like this whole spin-off show, and I'm like, oh, what the hell? So I was like, cool, I have 4 episodes to watch.
I think it was kind of a whole experiment where they were thinking, they looked at my YouTube channel and some of the other stuff. Like, I'm still doing interviews with some of the people from the other episodes that are still coming out later.
Right.
So I wonder if they were like, hey, we could save this whole marketing budget and Carl will just do it all. We'll see. But you know what?
That's
I'll tell
right.
you this much. Episode 1 came in like the top 5 national ratings. It only got beat out by like Housewives of New Jersey and a couple of others in the main show. And then the episode that I was on went way even beyond that and got the same amount of views as the main Skinwalker show. So we end up coming in number 2 and 3 on the entire nation for amount of people watching.
Good
And
for
so
you, man. That's
the
awesome.
opportunity to open it up and to be able to everything that we talked about tonight over the course of time, people coming onto this show and YouTube and like learning new things and expanding their scope of understanding, all is on the possibility.
Yeah, and that's what I really like about what this really does, what it means, right? Because what it means is now we're not bound to Skinwalker Ranch. This show can pretty much go anywhere on the drop of a dime and do these experiments and really give, like I said, fuel the main show, but also, be its own thing, its own separate entity as well. And that's just gonna be good for the brand. So I mean, I'm all for it. I like the content, so
Me
I
too.
like the experiments. I like watching it. And not every episode's gonna be like this, crazy UFOs all over. Not every episode of these kinds of shows are like that. It's like the same with these ghost shows. I don't like the false buildups. So what I really like is that it's been data driven so far. So
Yeah, it'll be really cool. I hope we end up getting one for Mount Wilson Ranch, because I know for a fact that what they've got there rivals the entire Curse of Oak Island show and Skinwalker Ranch and Blind Frog and all those put together, as far as what they've got with the abandoned gold mines, the Spanish hand stone cart paths, the gold mines, all the ancient artifacts that go clear back to the Ice Age, and you name it. I mean, plus the paranormal supernatural activity there is bizarre.
Ranch?
What's that?
You're saying all that is on Mount Wilson Ranch?
Yeah, I mean, we found there's
And it's
spearheads and
Incredible.
arrowheads and stuff. We just had an archaeologist up there that
Dude.
What about the gold thing?
yeah, well, there's pottery there that we've had an archaeologist date to 1100 BC to 400 AD, like Stone
Wow.
Age stuff. There's stone tools and artifacts and arrowheads everywhere, but then there's abandoned gold mines, mine shafts, and gold mining implements from the late 1800s to the 1930s all over the place. So that's the whole
That's so
story. Is these
insane.
gold miners were up there in the late 1800s, the early 1900s, and they were digging down under Mount Wilson And the story is they entered some kind of a cave entrance or an antechamber or they hit something that scared them. And so they abandoned this mine, closed it all off, tried to hide it, and they got out. And then the next thing is the Ronald Reagan's MX missile program team showed up with a bunch of archaeologists. And then right after that, Bigelow and the NIDS team showed up, and they were there for like 10 years.
Oh, dude. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I love all of this. This is so
We've-
interesting.
Dude, we found underneath, Jeff and I just a couple of weeks ago were up there, and we found Bigelow and Jacques Vallee's light and sound projection equipment. Like, you know,
What?
in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind,
Yes.
you know how they were projecting light and sound to try and communicate with the UFOs? We found Jacques Vallee's stuff, the actual projectors and the light and sound board and equipment. It's in
Oh my God.
it's in a room behind the saloon at Mount Wilson.
That's incredible.
Bigelow's equipment, yeah, doing the same experiments up there.
What? That's so. Oh my God, dude. That's like the
See?
coolest
And
thing.
that just goes to show you that Close Encounters of the Third Kind was definitely
They were doing it all at Mount Wilson and Skinwalker. They're doing all that stuff.
yeah,
Yup.
but it just goes to show you how informed Spielberg was on that film.
Yes, actually, that's a great point.
Yeah, that French scientist, Pierre or whatever in the movie
That's
was based
Vallee.
off of Jacques Vallée. Yeah.
That's Valet. That's so wild, man.
There's
so
photos
wild.
of him, photos of Jacques Vallée, Bob Bigelow, the head of the Stanford Research Institute remote viewing program, Hal Puthoff, Colm Kelleher, all those guys standing up all over Mount Wilson, down in the meadow, trying
Yeah,
to
they showed a few pictures of Bigelow. I didn't see the ones of like the other guys though, but that's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
So there's clearly
is
some
insane.
some connection for the two places. There's not the same type of phenomena is happening. And I mean, from the episode that I saw, that first episode sounds like I mean, the activity is even a little bit more intense over at Mount Wilson.
It's almost I don't want to say anything to take away from the other show and from my friend Brandon Fugel and everything, but it almost feels like that they kind of went public and posted articles and admitted that they were at Skinwalker Ranch because they were really researching more at Mount Wilson.
Right.
Because the evidence is
Here's
that
the left.
there's
Right.
after my friend Jeff bought the ranch from Bigelow, one of the Rockefellers and his girlfriend showed up and said, "Hey, will you take us to see the portal?" And
What
Jeff
the
was
fuck?
like, "What portal? What are you talking about?" A Rockefeller
Wait,
showed up.
Which one?
Yeah. I don't know which one. He said it was David, but it must have been like a nephew or something. I don't know, but
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I thought David was too old. But the
Wow.
Howard Hughes, he at one point is involved and up there and owned the
Yeah, I
ranch
can
and put a
believe
bunch
that.
of money into the saloon and the decorations in the lodge. I mean, that it's right by Area 51, and there's been strange, interesting people up there since the beginning.
Yeah, the Nevada test range is. I mean,
The
it's
orchard at
right
Mount Wilson
there.
Ranch, the apple orchard down in the meadow, downstream from where the UFO is supposed to be buried, was probably planted historically by Johnny Appleseed. No joke. Like the real Johnny
What?
Appleseed.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Get the
They've
fuck out.
found that there's original cuttings that Johnny Appleseed probably went through there and propagated those trees. It's so wild how old this place is.
It's crazy that they'd be able to figure that out to begin
I
with.
know.
That's like crazy.
But see, that town, Pioche, Nevada, where Mount Wilson is where the phrase "the Wild West" comes from. Like when they
Oh, no
originally
kidding.
started talking about go out to the Wild West, they were talking about the town and the saloons in Pioche right there.
Wow.
That's the first
See?
time it was ever used. Yeah.
That's this has been really enlightening, man.
So
And I
cool.
almost don't want to stop.
Right?
We gotta have you back. I want to talk way more about this. We've only scratched the surface. But that episode. So the Mount Wilson Part 2 is the next episode to come out. Do you know when that's due out?
I have no idea. So they only told me when the first one was. Yeah, there's supposed to be a part 2, and then I think even a
Well, it
bonus
says
episode.
the next one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh, cool. So
it
that's
says
probably
Mount Wilson Part
Tuesday
2.
night. probably Tuesday night after the main Skinwalker Ranch episode. They'll air it.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
definitely, yeah. So
Can't
keep
wait.
an eye out for that for everybody. And again, we would love to have you back on. I want to talk about. There's so much more. Like even the how both places. The correlation between Bigelow buying these places that all have lore about something being in the ground there,
Yeah.
right? Where we talk about the meadow, and then we talk about the basin, right?
Yeah.
Where they think the whatever is buried there that they keep digging for on Skinwalker Ranch, but haven't yet to be successful. Is there any operations planned for like that? To do that?
Kind of see how the two are connected.
Well, to dig for to try to dig into that mine.
Yeah. So so in the episode where we used the dynamite and we tried to access the lava vent tubes,
Yes.
part of why I took the History Channel up there was because I know where the actual entrance is. So Jeff and I have found the real entrance, and we're going to be coming out with that. I've released a couple of photos on my Patreon for the people that are paid subscribers to get the exclusive stuff. A few photos of it already, but the old original, like 1800s to 1930s mine shaft where they supposedly dug down and ran into the structure or the craft underground that scared them. The last year's snow runoff, when it melted this spring, since we've filmed the episode of the TV show, we've gone up there and double checked a few spots, and we
found something new.
We found for sure where it's at.
Oh God!
Wow.
I mean, it's a whole entrance. Yeah.
Oh God! I definitely want to see
man.
that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's well, definitely keep us up to date on that. I would love to be
Please
able to
do.
cover that when you do, because that's incredible. And so now I assume you didn't just find the entrance and not take a peek.
I filmed putting a snake camera down parts of it. We filmed all around it. We've brought up a mining expert and an archaeologist since.
You got to make sure everything's stable and you're not gonna
it's totally unstable right now.
Yeah.
We're not even sure the circumference of how big we're gonna have to put caution tape around this site because it's a huge spot. Yeah.
Wow.
There's evidence of a major cover up there.
Really?
That's
So,
very strange.
I mean, just the fact.
Whoa.
I mean, the whole thing, even with Bigelow, like the filling it out with sawdust and all that stuff, like that was very suspect. Just to begin
That is
with.
strange.
So
Yeah.
the fact that this one was was this one even more elaborately covered?
This is like straight up minecart railing and
okay.
Oh,
giant chains and conveyor belts going into the earth like a huge
sounds
thing.
like a horror movie plot. Like
there was an entire building built over top of this that they tried to hide. They tore down and tried to hide it.
You gotta think, like, what would they be hiding? You know what I mean? Like, honestly,
you go in for gold and you don't leave without it. So,
of course, that's right.
You know what I mean? For them to shut it down like that is serious.
It was a major operation, whatever. It was a huge mining operation. The equipment there, the size of the chain on the conveyor belt and everything going into the earth is like it was a big operation. There's big sub pump pipes, like for drawing water out. So they were below the water table and pumping the mine out. It was a big deal.
Wow, so you guys got a lot of work ahead.
A lot of work.
Oh, man.
That's what I'm saying. Like the whole idea that like they'd been drilling for how many seasons on Curse of Oak Island looking for the money pit. And I'm like, when you see this thing at Mount Wilson, it's crazy.
It's like you found the money pit.
Pretty much, yeah.
There it is. Like why
right there, poking out of the ground.
So I guess I mean your channel's gonna have to be that show for a while until it gets picked up.
That's the whole thing. Is I'm like filming all this stuff. I'm finding all this stuff on the fly. We're going up there and just running with it and discovering it, and I'm capturing it. But at the same time, I am getting texts and calls from the producers and different people that are like, they want to peg all these discoveries out over the course of a year. And we're like, Jeff's like ready. You saw him on the show. He's like, let's get the dynamite out.
Yeah.
He wants to go
Yeah.
in. So yeah, all I can say is if we get sick of waiting, we're just gonna go for it on our YouTube channels and just do
Love
it.
that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
But
would
it's
love to
gonna
take a
take
trip
that.
out there and pay.
Such a beautiful area.
I'd even pay to have you come down to hike around with, and I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah, just get a group together. That's the way to do it. Is you can, get a small group and come up and get a few rooms to split the cost up and have me come over, and it'd be really
Yeah.
fun.
I mean,
I'll
I'd
show you
love.
all the
I'd love to
spots,
come
show
out
you
there.
come and see the hole and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I've never even been to that part of the country before. Like the closest was California when I was like 3. I've really, really wanted to go out to like the desert and see the mesas. I've been dreaming about them like my whole life for some
Yeah.
reason. And I'm like, what does this mean? Like I must go there. I don't know what it's about though, but I see it in my dreams a lot. It's really strange.
It's like
Yeah.
a whole pilgrimage I think you could do. I see people, coming into Las Vegas and having fun there. And then you make your way up to like Area 51. You
Oh,
see
man.
the little alien and go to Rachel, Nevada, the black
Yeah.
mailbox and all that. And then
Oh,
you go
I
up
want to
and
do all of it.
there's nowhere to really stay there. So you go to Area 51 and then you're like, now what? We go back to Vegas or what? We're in the middle of nowhere. But
Right.
you can just go up, get on the Patreon and go get a room at Mount Wilson and you're right
That's
there.
so sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right
So
there.
Oh, dude.
no, so where can people keeping? So where the links are all in the description below. But how can people keep the conversation going with you? And what's up next?
Yeah, so I always give my paid followers the preference because they're the ones supporting the research, putting fuel in my gas tanks. So guys like UFO Shane and stuff, when they comment on my Patreon, I get right on there on my phone and try to reply and have the ongoing contact with my inner circle there. But yeah, I'm always when I premiere a video on my YouTube channel, I'm there in the live stream chat on the premieres. So make sure and subscribe there. I'm on Twitter and Instagram all over the place. So if you find my link
yeah.
tree, find all of that plus Mount Wilson and my Native American friends even have a Patreon page and all that too to go follow them. So
Yes, and keep doing the amazing work, and we'd love to have you back, man.
Definitely.
Definitely, you got that aura, and something's I don't know, something's on the horizon. I think at Mount Wilson, and you're just scratching the surface. So who knows what comes next, really?
yeah, it's going to be really exciting. I appreciate you guys having me on here and the open conversation is fun. It's
Yeah,
cool.
of course.
Such
right.
a good time.
Yeah, and for everyone, thank you for watching. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and if you're listening on Apple or watching on Spotify, make sure to rate and leave the show a review. It helps with that algorithm. And let's keep exploring the unknown together.